It was gonna be epic! Hey everyone, it's Olivia and welcome finally back to my channel. I know it's been a little while and I really apologize for that. I've just been really burnt out lately and dealing with some severe burnout, so I appreciate your patience and thank you so much for all the kind and sweet messages just encouraging me to take care of myself and that you guys will be here waiting for when I come back, so I really appreciate it. Also, thank you so much for 10,000 followers. Holy moly, I can't believe it. I'm just blown away and I'm so appreciative and just so honored that you guys find me interesting enough to subscribe and watch my videos. All your views and comments truly mean the world to me. I can't even express it. For this week's video, it's not on the part 2 of my autism and relationships video featuring my boyfriend Alex. That is coming, I promise. It's just been a little hard to get our schedules to match up because he works all day and by the time he comes home it's dark out and we can't film, so I promise that is coming. But in the meantime, I thought I would do another video on a highly requested topic and something I wanted to talk about anyways, which is autism and work and having a job. So this video is going to talk about what it was like for me to work a 9-to-5 while unknowingly autistic and kind of why people with autism may struggle to find a job or keep a job, and while working as autistic just kind of sucks. It is estimated that almost 80% of autistic adults are either unemployed or underemployed, which means they're working jobs that are below their skill level or below their pay grade just to have a job. A lot of autistic adults are also working many part-time jobs because they can't get a regular full-time great career job, or they end up becoming self-employed like myself because they just can't take working in a regular 9-to-5 environment. Now, why do autistic people struggle in finding a job? I can tell you now, it's usually not because they lack skills or education. So many autistic people are extremely smart and extremely well at what they do, especially when it's in a field of their special interest. Usually autistic people, when they're working, we're not bad at the jobs. We can usually be the best at the job because we can focus intensely and get things done in a quick amount of time with precision. So a lot of times we're usually the best person for the job. It's the other things in the workplace that is challenging for them. It's not the work itself, it's all the other bull crap that you have to deal with while working, like coworkers and bosses and small talk and social cues and all that fun stuff that we hate. So before I talk about why autistics can struggle at their job, let's talk about how a lot of times autistic people don't even get the chance to go struggle at the job because they can't even get hired. Getting hired as an autistic person is extremely challenging because think about how hard it is to get a job and go through the hiring process as a neurotypical person. It's challenging, there's a lot of pressure, you have to say and do and present yourself in a way that they want, and this can be very challenging to nearly impossible for somebody on the spectrum because we're already bad at small talk, which a lot of times there needs to be in a job interview. We're bad at making eye contact, which there definitely needs to be in a job interview. We can be bad at reading body language, and we can be too blunt, so we'll just be blurting things out that maybe we shouldn't say, but that doesn't come into our head. We're just gonna say them because that's who we are. We're blunt. You shouldn't be judged on whether you can make eye contact or hold a conversation. It should be based on your work skills. But unfortunately, in the world we live in, so many times employers are not hiring you based on your actual skill sets and ability to do the work and task that they're asking you to do, which is what they should judge you on, but they're not. They're judging you on how you look, how you act, how you present yourself, because autistic people come off as quirky or, you know, just shy or different, then we don't get the job. Even if we're the most well qualified and could do better than anybody else, simply because we don't present ourselves in a regular, cool way. If we manage to somehow navigate the job hiring process and get the job, then it can be torturous to hold the job. So sometimes, say say for females on the spectrum, we could mimic our way in and fake our way in. I know that's what I did, but then eventually mimicking every single day for 9 hours is extremely exhausting and we can't keep it up anymore. So once that mask kind of slips off, then suddenly your boss is thinking you're slacking off, or you no longer want to be there, or you're doing bad at your work, which happened to me, and again, I'll explain later. But it's not that, it's just we're so exhausted that we can't possibly keep up this fake act anymore, but it doesn't matter because again, all they're looking at is what kind of a person you are, not your ability to do the job, which is so terrible, but unfortunately that's usually what it is. And this can cause us to get fired or demoted or not promoted, even though you're very deserving of it. It can be challenging for us to drive to work and actually get ourselves to work. And this can lead to anxiety and PTSD. This can also be caused from the workplace environment among coworkers with gossiping or bullying or not allowing the autistic people to fit into their cliques, because whether we like to admit it or not, high school is forever. My boyfriend showed me a song that I think is literally called High School is Forever or something along those lines, and it is. Sometimes we need longer amounts of time to perform tasks that may be challenging for us, but employers oftentimes don't have the system in place to accommodate our special needs, because a lot of times we do have special needs and they just won't accommodate it. So now let's talk about my work experience, and it's not normal, it's very unusual, and it probably deserves its own video if you guys be interested in that. But basically I started working at age 11 and worked all the way up to my dream job and got that at only age 18 without stepping foot on a college campus. And I definitely want to do a video about how you don't need to go to college to be successful and have a great life. And let me repeat that, you don't need to go to college to be successful and have a great life. Anyways, jumping back into my work history, at age 11, I started working at a local newspaper as a columnist, writing about the NFL and San Diego Chargers. And from a young age, that was my dream. I wanted to be a sports reporter, I wanted to be a sports journalist, and I wanted to talk all about football because that was one of my special interests and still is. I was then able to get a job at Sports Illustrated at age 14, and that was a really awesome job because I didn't just get to write for them, but I got to do on-camera stuff and go to like red carpet events and sporting events and interview celebrities and athletes, which was super cool and super fun. That job then led me to another job with a small magazine, again writing about, women in sports and kind of being empowered to be able to do anything you put your mind to, even though you're a female. And then that job led me to get an internship at San Diego's biggest newspaper, the Union Tribune, which was part TV because they had a TV program at that time. So I got to edit nightly sports shows and produce those. And then I also got to write on the newspaper side for that, and that job eventually led me to my dream job at the age of 18 at the NFL Network. Now, what do all of these jobs have in common besides that they're in the sports journalism world? They were all short-lived, and it's not because I got fired. I never got fired, but I would always ultimately quit them. And this was something that I could never understand because it was a field that I loved, yet I hated the job so much. It would always start off good. I would always start off like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I love it. And then it would eventually be the same pattern and it would spiral down until I couldn't take it anymore and I would ultimately quit. Now, I didn't know I was autistic at the time, so I didn't understand what was happening. Why did I hate working so much in the field that I supposedly loved so much? It wasn't until last year when I figured out that I was autistic that things started to make sense. First, what do you do when you're at a job? You socialize, you have coworkers, and that's terrible if you're autistic because a lot of times we don't like socializing. We struggle with small talk and we struggle with social cues and things like that. So for me, one, I was wearing my mask all the time, which was exhausting. And then two, I always thought everybody hated me and was gossiping about me. And well, maybe they were, I don't know. And so that would give me anxiety and PTSD and all sorts of bad things. Then number two, what else do you deal with at work? You deal with sensory things, you deal with lights, you deal with noises, you deal with smells from people's lunches or colognes or whatever. And so on top, you have you're working overtime to try to look normal and socialize and have small talk. Then you're overstimulated with all of these terrible things that bug us. And so it really is a recipe for disaster. And then me personally, I don't know if this is an autistic thing or just me, but when I would get bored at work, I would get extremely anxious, and then my anxiety turns into depression, and it was a vicious cycle. So even though I would go into all these jobs super excited and I would very much succeed at the job and do fantastic, not trying to toot my own horn or anything, I would always end up having to quit because I would get so anxious and so depressed and just get into a terrible spot in my life, and nothing is worth your mental health. Another thing I think is overlooked with autism in the workplace is a lot of times autistic people have trouble understanding verbal directions. We're very much like hands-on and visual learners. And so for me, when people like my bosses and stuff were giving me, social instruction or verbal instructions in meetings and things like this, I couldn't retain them. And so then I would be scrambling trying to figure out what I was supposed to do because I just couldn't understand. Now I thought I'd talk a little bit more in depth at my NFL Network job and my experience there, because that is the only 9-to-5 job I've had as an adult. All the other jobs were pre-18 years old. So when I got to the NFL Network, it was obviously a dream come true. I had accomplished my dream job at only 18 years old and proved so many people wrong, and I was super excited to get there. And when I first got there, it wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't what I was expected, because the work wasn't super exciting or anything. It was very mundane and there wasn't a lot of it because they had hired way too many people for the workload. So there was a lot of sitting around, which made me bored, which would make me anxious. But when there was work, I was extremely good at it. I could do it faster than anybody, and I always succeeded in anything they told me to do. And I would do it with my pretty mask on, like I was the happiest person and always smiling and all of this. But unfortunately, just like any other job I've had, it eventually turned sour because I got bored, which would make me anxious, which would make me depressed, which would make me have meltdowns, and the vicious cycle continued. So my mental health took a major hit. I would dread coming into work. And another thing that sucked about that job is there wasn't a set schedule. You had one day off a week, and it was any which random day, and your schedule was never the same. One day you'd be coming in at 5 a.m., the next day at 2 p.m., and the next day at 11 a.m. And so you couldn't get on a schedule, which is obviously a recipe for disaster for somebody with autism. And so that made me very anxious, which contributed to my mental health decline, like major decline during this time. As my mental health deteriorated, I didn't try as hard to wear my mask because I just was too exhausted to do it. And so this took notice from my bosses because I wasn't my smiley, happy, funny self. I was very reserved and kept to myself and didn't socialize. I just stopped trying in that aspect. Did I stop trying to do my work? No, my work never faltered. It was just as good as day one, as day whatever, when I was extremely struggling. But like I mentioned before, this wasn't okay with my bosses because I was no longer doing it with a smile on my face. At one point, I got brought into my boss's office and asked what was up because I suddenly was no longer smiling and blah, blah, blah. He accused me of no longer doing a good job, and I got so upset at that because I will fight tooth and nail to prove that my work did not falter. And for him to say that my work faltered simply because I was no longer doing it with a smile was horrendous. I then broke down and told him I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression because, again, at the time I didn't know I was autistic, to which he said, "Suck it up. Everybody gets sad sometimes." After bawling my eyes out for about 15 minutes in the parking lot, I came back in. He had made another superior to mine, a woman, become my babysitter, and she walked me like a hawk to make sure I did my work, even though I was doing my work. As you can see, I'm getting worked up because I just am so mad at this situation. For them to watch me like I'm not doing my work, follow me to the bathroom, ask permission to go to the bathroom and go to lunch. Obviously this didn't fly with me and it didn't last long because I quit the very next day after doing a stellar job cutting and editing the playoff game that Saturday. It was an awful experience, but one good thing came out of it, and that is my boyfriend Alex. I always say God has a plan for everything, and obviously his plan for me was not to go actually work at my dream job, it was to go meet my dream man at my dream job. So that's the one good thing that came out of that job. But after I quit, I realized there was no way I was going to be able to have a regular job. Obviously, look at all these failed experiments that I've had. I just couldn't handle it. And so I ended up starting my own business, and almost 6 years later, I am doing pretty well at having my own business. I think I've started rambling in this video. I'm so sorry, it's probably gonna be long, but thank you so much for watching this episode. Have a blessed day, and I will see you next week with an all new episode of Autistically Me.